It has been a slow go of it for the Detroit Pistons this year. We just finally got a W that now we are no longer the worst Pistons team in Detroit Pistons history, but they just got some great news. And I think the reason it's great news is everybody can kind of agree it's probably time to move on. And when we say move on, we don't mean just get rid of, but we also mean promote in a place where he's probably more effective here. And what I'm talking about is head coach Dwane Casey. I love Dwane Casey. I think he's a good coach. I think what happened to him in Toronto was really difficult. And now he's probably looking at a similar fate in Detroit. But I really do like what Dwane Casey offers. I think he is a good man. I think he is good for the game of basketball. I think developmentally he's been good in the past. But let's be honest, even with the rash of injuries and things like that, he's underperformed. And the Pistons do not have a great roster. They have an extremely young roster. I'm not going to say they lack talent because they don't, but they're extremely young. Cade getting hurt hurts. But here is a report that came out that said the Detroit Pistons staffers are preparing for a new head coach last season. The coaching carousel is ramping into motion, and that means league sources are whispering into reporters' ears. And this is one of the things that we're hearing. Now, we knew this was inevitable. We know that Dwane Casey has one more year on his contract. So we can look at that and say, okay, he's got one more year on his contract. So what does that mean? Does that mean we let him coach next year? And I guess these rumors really heated up when he was delayed about a half an hour after I think it was just a couple games ago. He was delayed a half an hour when he was reportedly meeting with owner Tom Gores. All right, so let's look into this a little bit. It says various staffers are preparing for Casey to no longer hold his head coaching post next season. League sources told Yahoo, with the potential for Casey to step into a front office advisory role similar to Alvin Gentry's path in Sacramento. That's worked out pretty well for them. All right. It has been long rumored the ideal path for Casey was to coach the Pistons and eventually land a front office role when he decided to hang up his clipboard. The big question is whether he's ready to stop coaching or if he feels he has more good years left in the profession. So this is very interesting. And what we'll see with this, and it goes on to say later in this article, and because here was my thought, and we'll go back to that in a second. My thought was always Dwane Casey's the one who gets to decide. And he still is the one that gets to decide when he's going to go into a front office role. I think the Pistons might just tell him, hey, if you want a front office role here in Detroit, you're more than welcome to it next year. But if you want to stay on the bench, you might have to find that with another team. So what does that look like? And do you think it's time for Dwane Casey to go? I think the fan base is split about 70-30 on this. I think about 70% of Pistons fans want Dwane Casey to be gone, while I think about 30% of the Pistons fans want him to stay. They saw the development that he had in Toronto. Here's the thing. The NBA is moving in a different direction than what Dwane Casey does. The NBA is moving into get your best players the best position to get easy buckets. It's that simple. And then even more simple than that is allow shooters to shoot when open. What does your offensive scheme look like? How do you draw that up? Do you maximize the talent on your team? I think Dwane Casey is more of a fundamentals, do things the right way, hard-nosed defense. But even the defense with this young team, not good. I think the way this Detroit Pistons team is going to develop, because defense, I know this sounds weird, because I think we all feel that offense is much more complicated than defense. It's not. And so offensively, usually the game comes around for the majority of good players, guys like Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, James Wiseman, all these young, talented players. Generally, offense is the first and easiest thing to do. So I think the development of this Pistons team is going to be a powerhouse, become a powerhouse offensively, understand what you can do there, and then add to it on the defensive side of things. So this is Very interesting. So it says I parse that as the perspective being he could be part of basketball ops for the Pistons, or he could look into another franchise for a coaching opportunity. Fisher also reported that some potential coaching replacements, I do agree it might be premature. So don't get fixated on these names. Would be Bucks assistant Charles Lee, Raptors assistant Adrian Griffin, and of course you got to throw in Mr. Big Shot Chauncey Billups, right? You have to talk about Chauncey Billups. Charles Lee, for those of you who don't know him, he's an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks. He played in the Patriot League, I believe. I think he was even Patriot League like MVP, tournament MVP. Like he was a really good player. I don't think he ever actually played in the NBA, played a few years overseas, and has been coaching since 2012, 2014 in the NBA. So he's been in the NBA for about nine or so years. Adrian Griffin, you may remember him because he played for the Bulls to end his career. Actually had a couple stints with the Bulls, but he played in the NBA from 99 until 2008. His last team was the Seattle SuperSox. Isn't that nuts to think about? And he's been coaching since the moment he got out of playing. First with the Bucks as an assistant, then the Bulls, then the Magic, the Thunder, and most recently for the last 5 years under Nick Nurse with the Raptors. I don't think I need to give you the background on Chauncey Billups. I think you know who he is. And if you don't know who he is, are you a Pistons fan? So anyways, here's what we're looking at. Is this something that gives you excitement for the Detroit Pistons when you think to yourself, man, maybe we are moving on from Dwane Casey? Does that give you hesitancy? So really there's two camps. What are you in? Are you in that, nope, give him one more year, let him continue to develop the young talent? We're not there yet anyway. Or nope, get him out of here. I want an offensive mind. I want a guy like a Budenholzer or somebody from a good tree, right? A good coaching tree. So the Bucks would be that. Okay. The Raptors would be that. Do you want somebody under Nick Nurse? That's great. Do you want somebody that is going to be an offensive minded, defensive minded? Do you want to keep Casey? Do you feel the best way to develop players is relationships and developing them? Or do you feel like the best way to develop players is to put them in a good system and let them thrive in what their strengths are and then learn from there? So that's kind of the question on here. Hit up your comments below. Where are you at with this? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to start talking Pistons again. It has been a long season. We've focused heavy on the Detroit Lions on this channel, but we are a Pistons and Lions channel. That's just the way it goes. Sometimes there's lulls in the Pistons season, and none of you would have been watching these videos, but I think this is good news for the Pistons that they might be moving in another direction, but also get to retain Dwane Casey in the organization, because I think he is a very valuable person to have in the front office, and I would like to see what he would do. I think it could be similar to the role Spielman has with the Lions, something like that, just a guy that is for the Pistons, for the organization, and understands that relationship between the coaching staff and the front office. He'll be able to understand that very well. Hit that subscribe button below and leave your comments. See ya.